Hey guys, I'm Andrew Davidson, and welcome back to another As Per My Ability video. If you like what we do here at As Per My Ability, if you like our videos, if you like our content, if you like board games in general, please do all the fun YouTube stuff, comment, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff to help our channel grow. Also, make sure you hit the bell in the corner so you get notifications when we post new videos. I've heard that if you hit the bell, you get 7 years good luck, but you'll never know unless if you hit the bell. So thanks for everything that you guys do to help the channel grow. So today's video, I am sitting down and we're going to talk with Andrew from Board Game Crawler podcast. And so Andrew, thanks for sitting down and joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So a little bit of history before we get into the show or to the interview, I suppose, just to let everyone know that's watching at home. We're just going to sit down and have an interview. We're going to talk about Andrew's podcast, who he's one of 3 hosts, so he's kind of 1/3 of the show that is going to be that's represented today. And then towards the end, we're going to do something kind of fun. And Andrew's decided to just throw out, I believe, 5 games for Halloween this year, what he likes about them, why he thinks they're good Halloween games. Of course, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in as well. And we'll do that as something fun towards the end. But for the moment right now, we're just going to talk with Andrew. And so again, like I said, Andrew is just 1/3, right? So who are the other co-hosts or hosts who's not being represented?
My other 2 co-hosts are Ralph and Joey. So yeah, I am 1/3, but I also do the most work out of the 3 of us. So you can call me the main host. I won't tell them.
Okay. And full disclosure to my audience, because I always like to be upfront. I was featured on their podcast, just so everyone knows. And when I was on, there was a Michelle as well. Is that someone who's part of the show?
Michelle is my wife, and also the second half of Board Game Crawler in general. The podcast is a small part of what we do, but we'll talk about that later at the plug time.
Okay, cool. All right. So I guess to get things rolling, before we actually get into podcasts and what that's all about, give me just a little bit of your origin story. Like, how did you get into games? When did you start playing games? What was the game that got you into it? So go ahead.
Yeah. So my board game origin story actually goes way back. Ever since I was a kid, I always remember like playing games with my brothers, with family members, even as a kid with a lot of video games, I was still always down to play board games. Around middle school age, I believe it was, the Dungeons and Dragons movie came out. I think it was 2000, 2001. Not a very good movie. Watch it at your own discretion, but
I didn't even know there was a movie.
It's pretty bad, but
wow. Must be that bad. I'm surprised there's not a Magic the Gathering movie. Like, they would make so much money. I know this is off topic, but man. Okay, so
one day
I'll have to check out the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Yeah, you get a good laugh out of it. But anyways, that movie came out, and it really caught my interest. And I remember asking my dad, what is Dungeons and Dragons? What is that all about? And he had played back in the 80s before I was born. So he starts telling me, what it is, all the Dungeons and Dragons war stories from when he used to play, if you will. And I got super excited about it. So for my birthday, somewhere around that time, he gave me the 3 books it was Dungeons and Dragons 3.5, which was the only version out at the time. I kind of learned to play. I don't think I actually ever learned the proper rules. And looking back, there's definitely, I'd say I only got like 2% of the rules down, but enough to play with like friends and my brothers and stuff. So I started to get really into that. I also, a friend from school got me into Magic the Gathering, collecting the cards. Again, I don't think we actually learned how to play the game, but it was fun nonetheless.
Oh no.
So through high school, though, I kind of like backed off on the games a little bit, just, life happening. And then a few years after high school, after I finished aircraft mechanic school, a close friend of mine had moved back from college, and I started hanging out with him a lot. And we started to play games. We started to play things like Munchkin and Dracon, which is a great old Fantasy Flight game. And from there, we also then got into Magic the Gathering and actually learned the rules this time. And so we played a lot of that. A few years after that, by the way, the starting to play games again was also when I started hanging out with my now wife, because it's actually his sister. But
Oh, okay.
So we played, games pretty regularly throughout that time. I used to be in a band, so most of my time was going to that and working, but we always had games on the side. 2014, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons came out, so we got into that. I dabbled in some wargaming with War Machine. But around that time, a friend of mine brought over Settlers of Catan. I don't know if you ever heard of that game, but that was the first board game where everything really clicked on what a board game could be. So, once me and Michelle moved in together, we started building our collection. And then I think about 2 or 3 years ago, when we kind of stopped doing the whole band thing, we had talked and been like, hey, we always talked about opening our own bar one day. Maybe we can do a board game bar or something. So then we really started, pedal to the metal on collecting games. And I don't even know how many games we have at this point, but so at this point, I'm fully committed to the hobby. So that's basically my origin story from then till now.
Do you own a bar? Do you run a bar?
No, not yet. Working on that.
So do you have a title? Do you have a name? You always got to have like a punny name for.
Exactly. You need a good punny name. You need like the something and something. I don't have a name yet. I was kind of going to figure that out later, when maybe something would present itself that would inspire me to name it something.
Yeah. You always got to have that, like something cute, but kind of campy,
exactly.
But also still kind of brilliant if you think about it.
Right. Like in Orlando, they have the Cloak and Blaster, which I think is a fantastic name for a board game bar.
Yeah, I come from a pretty small community, so like the only thing I know is like Snakes and Lattes is huge.
That's a good one.
They're in Canada, I believe.
Yeah.
And so with, you talk about history with Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. How did you get into more board games, like beyond, just Catan? Like, how did that happen?
I guess aside from when we moved in together, we also, I guess, started hosting a lot of like get-togethers. And so it's much easier to pull out a board game to play with a bunch of your friends than to try to teach them Magic the Gathering or stuff. And, a lot of them we also play Dungeons and Dragons with, but that's like, a commitment, a weekly thing. So, we started off with a lot of party games and a few more strategic ones here and there. I know, I don't know if I talked to when you were on the show, but Lords of Waterdeep was one of the first real on the crunchier side of games that I got, which I've played the crap out of at this point. Oh, can I curse on this on this show? Okay. But no, I don't really think there's a force behind it. It's kind of just naturally happens, right? You have your few gateway games that everybody comes in some, there's like 10 gateway games that everybody cuts their teeth on. And so mine was Catan. And then so it just naturally evolved into getting into heavier and heavier games.
And so I was on your show a couple of weeks ago or so at this point, at the time of filming this, because this was going to obviously go up later. Have you seen have you gotten some help with your Tom Vazel problem? Have you gone through counseling?
No, I just been brewing on my own angst.
Yeah, you gotta like let that stuff go, man. I hate his baggage.
Yeah. Maybe me and Tom can go to group therapy or something and work it out.
Yeah, so those of you watching, we're kind of referencing a conversation from the Board Game Crawler podcast that we're talking about. Tom Vazel of the Dice Tower Network. And so so you're talking about, playing games, started with a lot of party games, got into some strategy games. What would be, outside of Catan, what would be your first memory of like a strategy game where you were like, this is good, I like this, like I'm hooked?
I think it was Lords of Waterdeep that really put me over the edge.
Yeah, and that's a worker placement, Dungeons and Dragons kind of themed, although the theming is really, in my opinion, just kind of there.
Yeah, it's not really relevant. It's underneath the hood, it's a great game, but you could have put any IP to it and it probably would have worked.
So with all of that history, let's talk about podcasts. So what made you want to start a podcast? Take me through that kind of period and how that all came together.
Right. So a couple years ago, and this is in reference to being inspired to try to work towards opening our own board game bar cafe, we started doing Meetup group post events on Facebook and Meetup.com. And so as we were getting into it and building a following, I was looking for a way to kind of get a little more of an outreach and just also I'm a bit of an audio nerd because I come from a music background. So I had the equipment and stuff, and I asked actually both Joey and Ralph, I met through the events. They had come to the events as when I first met them. I asked them if they wanted to, be a part of it and give it a shot. And they both agreed, and it worked out. We had good chemistry in the recordings and stuff, and we had good conversations. So it just kind of went from there. And especially when, COVID got bad, it was also a way to, try to stay relevant. We also did, you can check out our Instagram or our YouTube channel. We did 100 days of board games. This was my wife's idea, where every day for 100 days straight, we posted like little mini overview videos of 100 different board games. And that was
wow.
But like I said, we had to do something to stay relevant with COVID because obviously we couldn't have any meetups at the time. And I think we took almost a whole year off for that. But anyways, yeah, so the podcast is just to try to broaden the audience, try to, put ourselves out there more and show that, we're not just doing these events, for the heck of it. We are passionate about this stuff and things like podcasts and videos. You can really, let people see more of your interest through those avenues,
I'm a credible person in the industry. Yeah. I have a podcast.
Exactly.
You should listen to what I say is good and bad. No, I'm just teasing. So what were some of the challenges that you had? I mean, you had to come up with a name. You had your co-hosts on board. What were the challenges that you kind of had initially? Equipment, you said, was probably not a big deal.
Equipment wasn't a big deal. I think the biggest issue up front was figuring out kind of the space to do the recording in, right? And then besides that, the editing process. We had a lot of challenges with that, where at first I was having a friend help me and he was doing a good job, but it just ended up being a lot to do. And there was, when you're trying to edit these, a podcast, and somebody's got to make a decision for like, cutting content. And then, so like, you can't expect a third party to do that. So it got to a point where it's like, well, I'm going to be the one to do it because I have to make the call of what I want chopped up and not, right? So eventually I took over that. And, thankfully we live in a day and age where there's so many YouTube videos and you can learn basically anything. But it took some time to really kind of hone in on a strategy for editing. And I think we did eventually change up some of the equipment a little bit, but it's not too different. So I'd say the biggest challenge was mastering the DAW, the digital audio workspace. Other than that, everything else was pretty easy because we host through our own website, so that was an easy thing to do. And
okay,
so
what about the name? What is a board game crawl, or where did that come from?
So our original Meetup group that we started, we still are on Meetup, crawl board games. So we were, the whole theme was like, it's like a dungeon crawl and a bar crawl because we mainly hosts in, breweries and restaurants and stuff. So during the pandemic, when we were trying to do more stuff on social media, I talked to my wife and I'm like, look, like crawl's a good name, but without some kind of board game reference in it, it might, fall short on people understanding what it is.
Yeah.
So we retooled it to be Board Game Crawler, which still had a nice ring to it and still incorporated the Crawl Meetup. And then so naturally the podcast just followed the name of all the other social media and YouTube channel stuff.
Cool. And so the biggest problem that I had with at least the YouTube part the, my channel As Per My Ability, was figuring out what the show is going to be. So how is that for you? Because you obviously know, I'm not going to tell anything that you or my audience doesn't know, but there's about, last time I checked, there's probably like 2.8 billion podcasts about board games. And so how are you going to stand out? What's your message? Are you going to be an interview show? Like, talk about that a little bit, how you figured out what your show was going to be.
That's a good question. Yeah, we actually started out. So the original concept of the show was it was going to, and actually, if you listen to some of the earlier episodes, we say it in the intro, it was going to be a show about board games from the past, present, and future. And so Joey was our Kickstarter guy because he was really into that. So he was the future. Ralph tackled a present game, something that was modern within a few years. And I was doing games of the past and talking about like more old vintage games because I find those very fascinating. And
that's pretty badass, actually. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it was working for a while, but at some point it got a little restrictive, and we'd come up on recording day and everyone's panicking. It's like, oh, but I didn't prepare anything, or I wouldn't be able to have time to prepare stuff, because especially if I had an old game that I wanted to play, sometimes it's harder to get people to play those old games when you're like, look, it's probably not going to be as fun as something else we could play, but it's for research. So at some point we just said, screw it, and kind of loosened up the format to just, talk about whatever you want. We started adding more personal questions, personal bits to just give something more of a conversation instead of just like 3 presentations of a game. And then the most recent thing we started doing is reaching out for interviews and stuff like that. So try to get some cross promotion, and it's easy when you interview someone, as long as you can come up with a few questions, the conversation kind of just creates itself at that point.
You say personal bits. Can you give me an example of what you mean by personal bits?
We would do things like, I think on the show you were on, we did what's the game that stood out the most this year so far, things like that. Or, how do you feel about, Kickstarter as a method of producing games, things like that. Something that is more of an opinion piece than a factual piece. What I mean by that.
Yeah. And that can be for some good discussion as well.
Yeah.
So tell me about, I guess you can do a little bit of both. What podcasts do you listen to, or what influenced you? Or you could say YouTube channels, podcasts. What are your influences when you got started? Who were you listening? Were you listening to Tom Basil? You were listening to Dice Tower?
Not recently. Well, my favorite YouTube channel, besides As Per My Ability, is Shut Up and Sit Down. For podcast, I listen to the Shut Up and Sit Down podcast quite a bit, and I actually my wife listens to it, so I ended up listening to it with her a lot, is the H3 podcast, which has nothing to do with board games. It's Ethan and Hila Klein from their YouTube H3. And so when I started my show, and I've listened to a little random podcast here and there. When I did my show, I actually tried to steer clear of too many other board game podcasts, because I'm like, I just kind of want this to be our own thing. I don't want to be, persuaded by how somebody else is doing something and think, well, I got to do the same. So my goal for the podcast, as long as we keep it going, I would like to be the de facto board game podcast, because a lot of the board game podcasts, which I felt was kind of cheapened it, was a lot of the popular ones they're just like side projects to a bigger YouTube channel. So everyone's doing a YouTube channel first, and then they're doing a podcast on the side just to put more content out. So not a lot of people are doing like, it's the podcast first and everything else is secondary. So that's my goal. And I tried to make it more, it's an explicit show. So I wanted to make it very real conversation, and it doesn't have to be all bubbly and stuff like some podcasts can be. So we just try to be real, I guess you could say. Just try to be, this is what your average board gamer actually is like.
Maybe for those of you that were watching the one that I was on, I mean, we were talking about objectification of women and
Oh yeah.
slavery, a lot of like really
It got-
deep discussions and stuff. So if that's the kind of thing that, you know, my audience likes, you know, this is something, Board Game Crawler is definitely something that tackles those types of issues, not necessarily all the time, I'm
right.
saying, but you, as you already said, you like to have those opinion kind of pieces or discussion pieces, something that can open up to a broader discourse, I guess, or conversation
Exactly. Yep.
amongst you and your co-hosts. And so you mentioned about, you know, getting started and kind of like not being influenced. I guess I was asked who influenced you. So then, how did everything just get put together? Did you just sit down one night? Did you schedule like, hey guys, we're going to record on Mondays? I know that there was some problems, at least with the show that I was on, as far as being rescheduled. So how did everything just kind of come together and say, well, this is the thing now?
Yeah, I pretty much told after the Ralph and Joey agreed to do the show, I kind of said,
Oh.
hey, this is the format, and then come on this night and we're going to go for it.
So it was pretty simple, huh?
It was pretty simple, and they both did very well. So it was like, I think I kind of got lucky that everyone kind of showed up and was able to just kind of do it right away. Definitely, you can hear it in our voices and the way we talk. We're a lot more comfortable now than when we first started. For, you know, everyone's getting used to this whole concept of doing the podcast and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But even aside from it being, you know, even those guys like first time like recording their voices like that, they hit it off pretty well. And like I said, just the personalities, the conversations usually go well, and it's always moving and stuff. There's never a lot of dead air to cut out, which is nice. So,
So I guess what how long, first of all, how long have you been doing the show? It's kind of a relatively new show. Am I wrong?
no,
Like a year?
The latest format is probably less than a year, because we did take a big like 7-month break at one point, because pretty much from the time we were doing the 100-day videos till the end of the year, and then me and my wife bought a house, so that ate up a lot of time.
Yeah.
So we took a big long break, not intentionally. It just kind of, you know, life got in the way. But then we came back recently. So we came back in, I think it was March of this year. We came back, you know, harder than ever before, and trying to record weekly and stuff like that. And then now trying to expand our audience and interview people and stuff like that, and really try to push the show to a, you know, a little more of a professional show than what we had been doing. So you could say the show in its current form is fairly new, even though we actually the first time we ever did it was some time ago.
And so what you know, so okay, so you've been doing it, at least like you said, on and off at some point for a while. What, I guess, what in tips and tricks, or what would you say to someone watching on YouTube right now that wants to start a podcast? What advice would you give to them, whether if it be board game or whatever the content is? What would you say, like when you look back, you would be like, I should have done that different, you know? So what advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own podcast?
I'd say my advice would be, well, first of all, if you're thinking about doing it, just do it, you know. Just do it right away, either on your phone, or a lot of people have USB microphones, and you can get like bots that record Discord chats. But just, you know, get your friends together that you want to do it with, or if you're going to just do a solo podcast, write something and just record an episode or two and listen back to it, and just see if you like it before you really push harder into it. You know, don't run out and buy, you know, SM7B microphones that you see on literally every podcast. You know, which I should probably take my own advice, because I like to buy new toys constantly and tell my wife, but honey, it's for the podcast, I have to buy this. Just try it out. Come up with a format, come up with a plan, try it out. And if that plan doesn't work, just change it, just move on. And so that would be one thing looking back. I think I held on to the past, present, future structure a little too hard. And the minute I decided, screw it, we could do whatever. It made the experience more pleasurable because there was a lot less stress for people. Let's see. That's probably the biggest thing is don't be afraid to change your format and just make sure you enjoy doing it. Don't, if at any point it starts to feel like it's more work than the payoff, then just, stop doing it, take breaks. I think a lot of people too, which actually I said we were doing show weekly. And at this point I switched it to every other week right now, because I'm trying to catch up on different things. Just remember, I think a lot of people, they come in and they're like, I need to keep to this schedule. And it's like, well, no offense, you probably only have like 3 people that listen. So they're not going to be upset if you need to take a couple weeks off. Don't kill yourself. Don't burn yourself out, especially because, it's going to start off as a side gig. And yeah, I think that's my main takeaway from my experience.
This is very different because another individual I was talking about podcasts and that kind of stuff, they were saying kind of the opposite. And I think that the term that we used, that I used, is content is king. So you really want to just keep that content like coming out, or else, I mean, the moment you miss a week or a couple of weeks, or you have something, maybe you change jobs or you change cities and you have like 4 months of downtime, people are going to drop you like third period French. I mean, you will just not get where you were. And so the previous discussion that I had was very different than kind of what you're saying right now. You're saying like, hey, don't worry, don't sweat it, don't worry about just having to put yourself first, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth or trying to surmise what you just said. Yeah, and
put yourself first. And I you hear all the time the content's king, but the way the internet works, the way people follow and subscribe, like they're going to get an alert. It's going to get put into their suggested video. They're going to find it again. It's not, I don't think if you took a month off, you're going to it's going to hurt you that much. Because if you really do connect and have a fan base, they're going to come back, even if it takes you a month to get, a piece of content out. Like I always tell people I feel like everyone's obsessed with like multi-platform social media. And my way of looking at it is like, I just stick to the platforms that I actually use. Why? Because I don't use Twitter. So I tried using Twitter, right? I tried to make a board game crawler Twitter, but at the end of the day, I don't really go on Twitter. So why am I'm forcing myself to be a part of a platform that I don't really care about, So I focus on Instagram and Facebook because those are the apps I actually use. So I think that's another thing people get the wrong idea. It's in the same boat as like the content is king. Like you don't have to be on every platform. You really just don't. If you can muster the strength to do it, by all means. But if it's too much, then don't feel like it's bad that you're gonna not pay attention to some of the social medias.
It's quite provocative, since the most people that I've interviewed or just talked to in my daily life, they always talk about, you got to be on this, man. You got to be on this. You got to get something established on boardgamegeek.com. And you got to hit all of those platforms. So what you're saying is, go ahead.
I think that comes from, everyone has their content creator they look up to, and they're like, well, this person's on all these things, so I need to be on all these things. They don't realize a lot of those big people, they have somebody that's their job is to make sure the social media gets taken care of, right? Mm-hmm. They have people that help with that. It's not them alone. So if you're a one-man show or one-woman show, like, it's better to have a few good quality outlets than to try to spread yourself thin. So just because, name your favorite YouTuber and they have presence on every platform, it's not actually them. So don't feel bad most people.
Most of the time it's pretty much me if
exactly
if it's me. But this is something that kind of leads me into my next question, sort of in regards to, I think, and I'm going to just comment off of what you're saying about how there's such a pressure to get on the, 8 million different social media platforms. I think people have that idea because the more exposure means the more fandom, or the more likes, subscribes, the more friends they can get, which leads into my question of monetization. sometimes people think they can get into this kind of thing and make some money on it. And I don't necessarily mean board game podcasts, but just doing this in general. Most of the time, well, not most of the time, I'd say 99.9% of the time, that is not the case. So what would you say to someone that would say, I want to start my YouTube, I want to be a YouTuber and quit my day job as a high school math teacher? Tom Vassell reference.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, even on YouTube, you have to have 1,000 subscribers and like some crazy amount of watch time even to have the option to monetize.
It's like 4,000 hours in a year.
So it takes a lot. Like you're probably going to be doing it unpaid for a very long time. And then if you're lucky, you might blow up and become one of those big outlets. I know for podcasting, for podcasting, it's even harder because the streaming services, they pay out like way worse, I think, than like YouTube does. So that's why you hear so many ad reads in podcasts, because really the only way to make money in a podcast is to get that ad read revenue. And then it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because so the worst outlet's going to be like Spotify, iTunes, and stuff like that. That's probably the worst for payment, but it's also the most popular.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to make that decision. Do I want to be on a site? And I can't name any off the top of my head where people can actually, I think, subscribe to you directly. Or do you just want to be on the streaming services and then you're just trying to build the audience so that eventually you can get actual ad reads to monetize? So,
well, when I was on your show, you actually had an ad read, so you do generate some ads.
No, those were
or were those just
good,
like,
though, right?
we owed some people some money, so we paid them off in advertisements?
No. So an idea I had, and then this is free advice for you guys. So an idea I had to, aside from doing the interviews, another way to try to, cross promote with people was to do quote unquote ad reads, where I'm not charging any money to do it, but one, it gives, that creator of whatever their brand is something to share, which helps them because somebody's talking about their thing. And two, it makes it sound more professional, right? If you think I'm getting monetized, then
I did. It worked.
That second part.
Whoa, we have to
byproduct. Yeah.
I was like, we have to pause for an ad read. I was like, wow, fancy smancy.
Yeah. The main thing was just to, in this, call it our cross promoting campaign we've started of interviews and then that. So that was just an idea I had. We'll see how it goes. I have some more people to hit up for the next recordings to do, a little ad read kind of thing. But
the people that I talk with about YouTube and podcasts, just will kind of put those together, that want to start their own, whether, albeit being board game or whatever it may be. I feel like this is just for me, and I'm going to go to you to comment, but I feel like a big trip up that some people, at least the ones that I know of, fall into is that they want to get, like, for example, I want to get all the equipment, or I'm saving my money, or I'm going online, I got to find the right kind of lighting that I have over here, I get the right microphones and the camera. And I usually say you should probably sit down with a Word document and like outline what your show is going to be, how it's going to be different, how you see it advancing over the course of the next year, who's going to be involved, who's dedicated to be involved as far as a co-host and stuff. And I feel like that's a big pitfall. Do you see a lot of that in the community or people you talk with?
I mean, I can tell you personally, I sometimes fall into that trap where I tell myself I need some piece of equipment or something, and if I just get this device, it's going to help me. And I have to remind myself, or my wife helps talk me out of it. I picked up a saying, I think it was last year, it was a random internet quote, maybe you've seen it before, or some iteration of it, but it's be brave enough to suck at something new. So don't run out and work with what you got first, and then branch out as you need it. So when we started doing our 100 days of board game videos, we started the first 14 episodes or 14 videos, I should say, we did with a cell phone camera. And
Right.
once we were getting into the swing of things and going, okay, we kind of got a rhythm going. Now let's invest in a good camera, right? That's a $500 purchase. So you don't want to start with the $500 purchase. But we got to a point where we were feeling confidence, like between this and some other things we were thinking about doing, it's worth to buy the camera, right? Same thing with, actually, it's all set up now. We have very fancy lighting. It's the Niwar 3 light set, and you can change the temperature of it. That was something we started off with, just cheap Amazon lights, and learn to try to do some basic lighting. And then once we got to a point where it's like, okay, now we can upgrade the lightings because we kind of have an idea of how to use it. So now we can get a more expensive tool because we know how to use it for the most part. And I can tell you right now, there's stuff that I want to run out and buy right now, but until I start getting actual paid sponsorships, that's going to have to just be, it's going to have to make what I have work.
Yeah. It's what you said, something that triggered my questions, because you said that, just take your phone, just get a plug-in, a little like lapel mic for your phone that you can plug in and just kind of record yourself. Start off doing that. And that kind of triggered me of, I feel like a lot of people, they want to hit the ground. Episode 1, day 1, they want it to be this big, huge production, whether if it be podcast or YouTube. They want the set, they want the background, or they want the lighting, or they want the sweet intro music, the theme song, the avatars, or whatever you call it, the logos. There you go, the logos for it. They want to get all this stuff together, and it usually never really ends up happening. And if it does, it's usually a waste of time, because then you realize half the people weren't even that freaking committed anyways. So you just blow through a whole bunch of money. But I guess my question to you is, if you record something just on your phone, the level of quality, and I was talking with, again, I'm going to reference another interview I was doing. They were talking about one of the biggest, there was a survey, a poll that went out of what people want in a podcast, no matter what. And I think number 1 is good audio, like just really well done audio, edited. Everything can be heard perfectly. There's no dogs going off. There's not that you got your pop filter and everything. And so don't you think, and I'll get your opinion, don't you think that would kind of turn people off to what you're trying to do if you go so clandestine when you kind of start up?
It may. And I know I'm someone too who I probably unfairly do that and try to listen to a podcast. I'm like, I can't hear anything. This is not for me. I'd say that is true. And you should eventually work to get the better equipment. But like I said, with the phone, those first few episodes, those first few recordings, you need to practice basically. So even if the first few episodes are going to sound bad and people are going to skip by, you're still getting value out of that, because you're finding your voice, you're finding your rhythm between you and your co-hosts and stuff like that. So it's still worth just jumping in with the phone. And then, like I said, you do a couple episodes, you figure out how you're going to host, you put them up there, you tell your friends, tell your family, hey, check out this thing I'm doing. And then, then work towards a higher quality product. But, with that said, like with the camera, how I mentioned with the videos, you get the new piece of equipment, there's a whole new learning curve now for you. So a lot of times too, I think people think, oh, I'm going to buy this and it's going to solve my problems. Like, well, no, you're going to buy this and now you have a whole new thing to learn. So when I got the new camera, I had to, take a crash course in camera operation, because I never took a photography class in my life. So I had to learn all the basics and trial and error, all that stuff. So
cool. I had a coworker quite a long time back, a couple of years ago. This lady who I worked with day in and day out decided to start her own podcast, and she's a religious individual. So the name of the podcast, by the way, don't go searching this up. I don't think it exists anymore. But the name of the podcast was something along the lines of Jesus Meets Us in the Bathroom.
Ooh,
like meaning like that you can, have a relationship with God, I suppose, no matter where you are. And what she did is she thought she created, I'm pretty sure someone else has come up. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. And so she was like, I'm going to do flash casts, which like is going to be like 5-6 minute podcasts, all kind of in one take, not too polished, just about what's going on in my daily life. Obviously, I already said it had a religious content to it. And since I was friendly with this individual, I'll check out your podcast. It was absolutely horrible, Andrew. Horrible, because, and that's what I'm thinking of, is if you start, and she just recorded it kind of on her phone, there's lots of kind of air and like background sounds, a lot of and well, and it's just like you're gonna fill 5 minutes of that in your flash cast, like a flash podcast that's super short. And long story short, she just kind of abandoned the whole thing. But what I'm trying to say is, and hopefully get a discussion going, is that if you start off so minimalistic like that, it may turn off people to just really never check your site out again.
It is a possibility.
I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not trying to be like
no. You definitely make a good point, because I probably have done the same thing. So I guess it's kind of a gray area in the end, right? Because everyone's going to have some balance of what they can afford up front and what they're going to have to wait on. So, like I said, do you risk turning some people off? I'd say yes. I'd say I would risk turning some people off in the beginning if my stuff's not as high quality, in exchange for the experience, to then kind of get that return on that investment down the road, kind of thing. And who knows, those people might come back. They might go, oh wow, this podcast, I remember this podcast, but they're up to 100 episodes now. Let me see if it ever got any better. And then if it does, they say, okay, I'll give it another shot.
So my next question to you is do you see the one man, and I mean man isn't human, the one man podcast possible? Is it possible?
Yes. I think a good example, I think Hardcore History is a very popular one. And I think that's mostly one guy talking. I think to do the one man, one person podcast, you gotta be real talkative, or like be a real expert,
entertaining as hell.
Yeah, it's definitely more difficult. There's definitely some people out there that could do it, I think. But I think at that point, though, you're a one person podcast, though, also kind of comes off as an audiobook. So it's possible, but it's never going to be a talk show podcast that I think most people who listen to podcasts that's what they're looking for. They want to hear two people conversate and feel like they're part of the conversation and get some laughs out of it, or some good information out of it. So I think it depends on what the person's looking for. It's possible, but I think the general podcast audience is looking for probably more than one person. I'm no expert though, so that's at least what I would look for.
Well, I was asking you as an expert. For as per my ability, we do a podcast. We just do like a season one. We do the whole season thing because at least it gives a kind of a starting and stopping point. At least in my brain, I can organize content much better than if it was something like yours, what was just an ongoing thing, because my commitment is to the YouTube channel. And so that's my commitment. Whereas you said your commitment lies elsewhere. And so for the first season, we did this origin, which, you kind of did like your origin story. For the second season, I guess I'll provide just a little bit of history. During FDR's tenure as the American president, he did what they call these fireside chats over the radio during World War II, where he would just sit down, speak to the American public. And I was going to try to mimic that and be like season 2, like fireside, and have it just be me, just one voice. And I pitched this to some of the other people that are involved in varying degrees with As Per My Ability, or just friends of mine, and they all said like there's no such thing as like the one man podcast. Andrew, you can't pull that off.
Yeah.
So I was relying on your acumen to see if like, is this possible? Can someone do a one man podcast?
Yeah, it's possible. Just it's most people can't do it. I'm going to say
if it's short, I suppose. I suppose if you had one person going on for about 3 hours, that would be like a lecture or something.
Exactly.
But if it's short, because as I mentioned on your show, and I'll mention here on my channel, I like to do a lot of, I guess I'm influenced by a lot of Tom Think's thing from his Board Game Breakfast. And so I was kind of thinking of taking a season of As Per My Ability to do an Andrew Thinks, where it's just a quick little thing about like thoughts about board games in general.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm citing my source. I'm lifting ideas from other people. So whatever, just leave the hate below. It's fine. There's nothing new under the sun, but I wanted to frame it in kind of a season where it would be, 7 topics, pretty laid out. In other words, I don't just hit record and just start blah, blah, blahing, like Greta Thunberg. And I would start with, a topic and hit some bullet points and things like that. And so would you ever consider doing the Board Game Crawler, solo if people dropped out?
I don't think I would attempt to do it solo, just because I know me personally, I know I do better in conversation. That's why I can never be a stand-up comic, because I couldn't just drone on myself for an hour. I definitely need other people to play off of. If I was going to do something solo, which, you do it too, with the video, the YouTube video, the YouTuber setting, you get away with that a lot better with one person talking, because then you can have, pictures and graphics and stuff, and you can kind of justify the one person show that way. I would never attempt to do a solo episode of a Board Game Crawler podcast. Now I do want to start, and I'm a little inspired by how you do your show for our Instagram. I want to start doing some kind of one-on-one short video. I was in some kind of like tableside review of a board game, or just talk about a board game topic, just to put some more content out and challenge myself a little in that sense. And again, I'm going to do it video, because I think the video way of doing it's going to be a lot more appealing to people than just me talking on about Runebound editions for 20 minutes.
Right. So I'm going to just hit the last question that I have for our interview, and then we'll get into some fun stuff. And I actually have a little bit of a surprise. So those of you that are watching right now, I did not inform Andrew about this, but we're going to get into something hopefully kind of fun. But the last question I have is, so what's next? What's next for Board Game Crawler? Where do you see yourself in a year from now, or what's next on the horizon?
Well, hopefully, that's a heavy question, Andrew. Well, for the podcast, at least, from the next year from now, I'd like to see more interviews, more guests. I'd like to see people asking to be on the show instead of me just putting out a line. As far as our, meetups go, we're starting to get an average of 40 people a meetup. So I want to see, that number double in a year. We're starting a new event called CrawlCon. It's going to be like a mini monthly board game convention each month that we're partnering up with a local arcade. So,
oh, cool.
I'd like to see when people think board games in the South Florida area, they think of Board Game Crawler and everything we stand for and do. Might take more than a year, but we've had some pretty steady growth. And so as long as we keep that steady growth going, that'll make me happy. And at some point, if the universe allows it, we get that board game bar opened up, and I can quit my job.
Would you imagine the podcast kind of folding at that point? I would imagine.
Probably in the very beginning, just because I know opening a business, there's so much to do. Mm-hmm. I would make it a priority to try to get it back at some point. I know. So I would say we'd go on hiatus, but I wouldn't fold it in that sense. The other thing we might do, actually, I should have said this. At some point, right now I'm at a technology disadvantage. I'd like to start doing more live episodes of the podcast with video and stuff like that. We're at a hardware limitation right now because my wife streams that day, and right now we only have one computer that can handle like the OBS program to do that, and she uses it on the same night. But in the near future, maybe sometime next year, I'd like to start doing more, live streams of us doing the podcast, have more guests that with video like that, and kind of just up the production a little bit that way. And again, not because I'm trying to switch over to YouTube videos, just because I think that would be a good way for visibility. And it's fairly easy just to, if you have the equipment, just to set the cameras up and go. And then it's just like one extra thing. I did a couple episodes where I just set up a phone and live stream on Facebook just to have something out there, just to paint a picture of what we're doing. So that's where I hope things.
It would be cool, or will be cool, to do kind of like live stream from the bar or something, when like opening day or something, or to even just do the podcast, like how a lot of like 97.5, like, that we're on location, just to kind of live stream maybe a podcast from, insert the name of your clever bar title here, like we're here down at, this, that would definitely be very cool. That's something that that's one of the great things of technology, and just being able to just instantly reach out to people, just hit a button, like we're live streaming down at the bar. Have anyone that wants to come and sit down, I have a chair across from me, sit down and just kind of talk with them for maybe like 5 minutes, and then be like, okay, get the hell out of here. And then anyone else, or it just kind of make it more of an event, I suppose. That would be really, really great. Although awesome. we did talk about before before recording, Andrew and I did talk a lot about the crummy aspects of the internet. I remember when the term troll, like the trolling, now it just seems like that's just everyone's like last name. Like everyone, it's like not even a thing anymore. Everyone is just kind of trolling people for something. Anyways, that's kind of a bummer of a topic. I've noticed that you've got Halloween set up in the background. So what I did kind of talk with Andrew before we started recording. Actually, it was yesterday or a few days ago or something. He did prepare 5 games, since Halloween's just around the corner. I just asked him to put together 5 Halloween games, what he likes. Maybe do you have them in any order, or just
they're not in like a ranked order or anything?
Okay,
but
that's fine. That's fine. So we're just going to hear from Andrew 5 games he thinks are good for Halloween, why he likes them. Go ahead. Of course, I'll jump in and give my thoughts as well. Go ahead.
All right, so game number 1 to play on your Halloween evening, I'd say, is Mysterium. It's a great, I always compare it to Reverse Clue. It's one person plays a ghost. They're giving out these picture cards with these sometimes weird, fantastic paintings on them, and they're trying to lead all the players who are playing the psychics to who the murderer was. So it's like Clue in the sense you have a person, a location, and a weapon, and each person has a different set of people they're trying to find. So you're trying to lead them with pictures to try to like get their brain thinking of what you want them to pick. It's very fun. Game number 2 would be
cooperative game.
It is a cooperative game. Yes.
I noticed that like Mysterium gets left off of I watched a lot of Halloween top 10s or whatever, and I'm very glad you put this on the list so we can talk about this, because it doesn't get put on a whole lot of lists, although it was on mine, and I do need to update it to have you tried Mysterium Park?
No, we've only ever played the base game.
That is one of those where, for me anyways, I'm throwing out the original. It's kind of one of those
Is
things.
that
You know
good?
how a lot of people say like they play Splendor and then they played what was it that was Century Spice something,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, I'm throwing away Splendor. Like this game is so much better.
Yeah.
I've always liked Splendor, but Mysterium Park, I think it's quicker to play, it's easier to teach, it's still just as much fun. The base game or the regular game, it's not an expansion, by the way. The regular Mysterium, I feel, is just some things I don't like about it, some things I do like about it, but it is, if you really play it up with the spirit character or whatever you call him, the ghost character.
Yeah.
I actually participated in a Mysterium tournament where you based it was like a league. You got points based on how well you did, and I ended up winning an official Mysterium. Oh, I should grab it. It's right over there. It's a Mysterium mask. It's creepy as all get out, but my huge big fat face won't fit on it. But it's from the company, which is like a Polish company, and it's a mask that you wear. But that would be cool to like wear a mask and put your hoodie up or something,
light some candles,
and play that game. So okay, cool. What's your next one?
All right, game number 2. I thought Munchkin would be a fun game to play, specifically Munchkin Bites or the Munchkin Zombies. But then the more I thought about it, it's like every edition, every version of Munchkin seems very appropriate for Halloween because it's a lot of backstabbing. I think it'd be cool to sit down with some friends on Halloween night. You're probably too old to go trick-or-treating, just sitting around waiting for trick-or-treaters to come, and play Munchkin for 2 hours. Play Super Munchkin, go to level 20, and just a little bit of nostalgia for the night. So game number 3 is I picked Dead of Winter, because what's scarier in a zombie apocalypse than not knowing who you can trust in your colony? I don't know if you ever played that one, Andrew.
I have, yeah. I actually live inside that game. Yeah, it gets very cold here. So
yeah,
I always tell people, like, because they can't use the Walking Dead license, but I say this is basically like the Walking Dead during the middle of a like North Dakota winter. So
I'm from South Florida, so when it hits 40, I'm dying. I'm not made for the cold.
We're at like -40 at that point. So continue on. I have played the game.
This next game, this is probably, if I had to pick one for you to buy, it would be Fury of Dracula. It's a really good all versus one game with hidden movement of Dracula trying to move around the map. It follows I think it follows like the original Bram Stoker, if I'm saying his name right, story. So the characters are from the book, and then like I said, Dracula's moving around Transylvania, whatever it is, East European map.
Europe. Yeah.
And all the players are trying to hunt him down, all the while Dracula's leaving traps or he's popping out and attacking players. It's a really good game. The only thing is it takes a while. So you got to be like, prepared for that. If you want a quicker hidden movement game, Letters from Whitechapel goes much faster. But if you like Letters from Whitechapel and want something a lot more involved, a lot more, character driven and variable player powers, Fury of Dracula is a fantastic game. And
this kind of came out of like Scotland Yard, is what I think, like from the 70s, that whole hidden movement, everyone's trying to catch a bad guy, and then they came out with, I don't know which came first, so you guys could look it up online. Is it Spectre Ops? Spectre Ops is another hidden movement, kind of everyone's trying to catch that person. Fury of Dracula, which I have and I've played. So I think it all kind of started with Scotland Yard, but with Dracula, and like you referenced the novel, it's definitely got that feeling of Dracula trying to bite and like infect, like get some brides to win the game, and he's stronger at night and weaker during the day and stuff like that. That's very thematic to the novel. As someone who's read the novel, it's very thematic, because a lot of people think that vampires die in the sunlight, which actually didn't come about until Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. Before that, vampires could actually walk in the sun. They just weren't very powerful. And so
they just didn't like it.
that's a misnomer, that because that wasn't until about the 70s when Anne Rice, I assume you're familiar with Interview with the Vampire,
Yeah.
the idea of sunlight killing vampires, that was not a thing during, well, at least in the lore of vampires during Bram Stoker's book of Dracula. And
Right.
so Dracula does actually enjoy a afternoon walk in the book. And so what else you got?
Okay. So actually, so my
That's a
last
good one.
game, I'm not really big into horror, so I kind of already covered all the games that I like in the spooky categories.
Oh,
But
okay.
Ralph speaks highly of this one, and I know I can fall back on you for this one, but Horrified would probably be a great game to play on Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah, if you like the pandemic sort of setup, it's called action point allowance system. You get like four actions you can do, or 3 actions or whatever. Like Pandemic, the game Pandemic, you just kind of move about the board trying to, it's a cooperative game, and you're trying to, kill these monsters. Have you played, Andrew, have you played it?
I have not played it yet,
You've
but
not played it.
I know you talk highly of Prospero Hall, and Ralph spoke very highly of the game. So I said, you know what, I'll put it on, even though I never played it, I'll put it on the list because I probably should play it.
Yeah, it is quite fun. It's okay, so you mentioned Prospero Hall. They do very fun, easy games to learn for the most part. And there's also a new, what is it, American Creatures or something like that. There's a new Horrified with an American feel to it, with American Monster. Maybe it's American Monsters is what it's called.
Okay.
That I've picked up. I haven't had a chance to actually play it. I've opened it and kind of looked at it and stuff. I think the original really hits because it uses all of those, we were talking about Dracula, and it has like the Mummy and H.G. Wells's Invisible Man, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I think those are all creatures that people are going to be, they're just going to be noticeable. They're going to just know Dracula. Everyone knows Dracula, at least of our generation.
They're
I don't know
iconic.
about the Zoomers, but like they would know Dracula as a vampire. In the American one, it's like Chupacabra and
Okay, and like Sasquatch and stuff.
Yeah, it's just not quite as horrific, pun intended.
Yeah.
As the other one. Although I haven't played it, although I've read the rulebook and the gameplay is exactly the same. So if you're watching my channel at home right now, to piggyback on Andrew's last one, Horrified American Monsters, both of them play exactly the same. So whichever one you can find at Target or want to order off of Amazon, if you can get it in time, that's a great one to play for Halloween. I noticed no like Cthulhu, nothing Arkham on your list.
No, I thought about, I haven't played a lot of Cthulhu themed games. The one I have played, I'm looking at my shelf right now. I can't.
That would be my bread
called.
and butter right there.
It's a cooperative dice rolling game. I can't for the life of me remember exactly what it's called, but it's,
like Cthulhu Dice or something.
It'll come to me at some point, probably hours from now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like the people who like Cthulhu stuff, they're in it, right? They're hardcore fans. And I feel like you're either a hardcore fan or it just doesn't speak to you. And maybe I just haven't played the right game to pull me into that universe. I've never read the book or anything or any of those stories. So to me, it's not an IP that I gravitate towards. Though I would play like Arkham Horror and stuff because those are notoriously, famous board games at this point.
Yeah.
Opportunity hasn't come up yet, but I definitely would try it.
Yeah, I'm in that camp. I'm an Arkham horror. And so I'm a sucker for like when FFG puts out, the new, like they have a card game I'm sure you know of, and like they put out something new on their card game. Oh, I've got to have it. And at the time of recording this, it seems like Unfathomable, I can never say that word, is dropping around this time, at the time of recording this, which is basically a Battlestar Galactica with the Arkham Horror theme.
Okay.
to it. So you have a ship that you're on board traveling the Atlantic or something, and someone on board the ship is like a hybrid monster, but looks like a human. So it's a social deduction game, but it turned it into a long form. Are you familiar? Did you ever play Battlestar Galactica?
No, but I'm familiar with the format of it, the
Format.
concept of
It's
it.
the same format. Not that I've played Unfathomable. Boy, that was a tough one for me. I have not played it. It's not really but I haven't been able to get a copy of it yet, but from what I've seen, it's that same sort of structure, just with Arkham Horror. So of course I'm gonna get it at some point, because I choose to spend my money wisely. So one thing that I want to do right now before we close out, and I didn't tell Andrew about this at all, so he's totally Johnny on the spot. He has no clue what's coming is that I have five. Let me see. I'm going to be looking down. My phone is down here. I have 12 categories, and so what we're going to do is I'm not going to time you.
Okay.
Although I should, just to make you sweat a little bit. I'm not gonna time you, but I'm gonna give you a category or something, and you have to give me 3 games that match that criteria. So this is not on the list. This is just an example. So I would say, give me 3 games about insects.
Okay.
That's just an example. That's not one of them.
Gotcha.
So we'll go through all 12 of them, see how far you can get through. No repeats, because I did notice that you could use some repeats. So no repeats.
Okay.
Yep. And we'll start off with number one. Give me 3 games about zombies.
Okay, so Zombie Dice, Munchkin Zombies, and Dead of Winter.
Cool. That one was easy. And I'm not the be all end all when it comes to game. I'm not Board Game Geek the person, so I mean, you could make something up and I wouldn't even really know.
Zombies the game, you know that.
People have to just kind of fact check you once this gets posted, I suppose.
Yeah.
So number 2, and these are not in any particular order. They don't necessarily get harder or easier or anything. I just kind of wrote them down in my phone. Number 2 is, give me 3 games about food.
Ooh.
Oh, I see him looking.
You must say Sushi Go.
You must have some games in the room.
I'm looking. I don't think I have any of those. I'm gonna say Sushi Go. What's that ramen game you keep seeing online? Ramen something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna submit that one. And oh, what's it called? I'm looking around.
Game about food.
It's the one where it's like is this called Superfood? I think it's just like about a diner. If anything, I'm gonna have to pass on that. You can dox me on that one.
Okay. Yeah, that's gonna be one I'm gonna have to probably look up. I don't know Superfood.
Yeah.
I do know the other ones. Ones that I thought of when I was writing this in bed, kind of half awake, was Kitchen Rush, which is a real-time cooperative game.
Okay.
You said Sushi Go. There's also a la carte. Yes, so those are the ones that I thought about anyways. Moving on, we'll go to 3 games that take place in space.
Terraforming Mars.
Yeah.
Partially, there's some space to it.
Yeah, space. That's fine.
What's the other one? The Crew and Clank in Space, I'm gonna say.
I'm not gonna argue with that one. I've not played it, but it literally says in space in the
It literally
title,
says in space.
I was thinking of surprisingly, I've done this list with quite a few people, mostly online, not over video chat, and everyone says, I'm surprised you didn't throw out the Twilight Imperium.
That should have been an obvious one, right?
Yeah, that's everyone throws out like Twilight Imperium's giant. For those of you watching, it's just a giant space battle that takes probably 3 weeks to play.
Yep.
So moving on to the next one, this one should be really easy. So give me 3 games that are based on intellectual property. This you can figure this one out.
Okay, Marvel United.
Yeah.
Is it cheating that I'm looking around my room, or it doesn't matter?
I guess I can't like physically stop you. So
we'll say Star Wars Outer Rim and
Mhm.
Star Trek. What's it called? Generations or Legends? I'll say Star Trek Attack Wing because that's an easy one.
Yeah, that's pretty easy. There's like 800 million from
Yeah.
Firefly to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, there's a million games based on IP. Now, the real question is, are most of them good or most of them bad? I'd say about 51% of them are just awful.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Looking down, let's go with 3 games that have reprints. So older games that have been reprinted, new box, new artwork.
This is my specialty. So
Oh, yeah.
Tales of the Arabian Nights, Dungeon with an exclamation point. It's an old D&D property game. And I can say For Your Dracula again, because that one's had, I think, 3 editions now.
Yeah, it has. What was the Arabian Nights? There's a reprint of that, huh?
There's a reprint. I just got it recently, and I think I talked about it during the interview. That one,
Yeah, you did, but I
a bit.
thought you were just talking about the old school, like, because it's from like 2005 or something.
I think I either have that version or they
When-
redid the 2005 version. The original game comes from the 80s, and it was
Oh.
like the reprint is a collection of the original game and a bunch of the expansions kind of combined into one new full game.
Okay, so the next one, we'll see if you struggle with this one because this is pretty specific. Let's see if you can give me 3 word games. So like kind of like your Scrabbles.
Okay.
3 word games.
Categories, Word Slam, and I have a game. It's called Wordsley. It's like a mini, somewhere in between Scrabble and Categories.
Okay, so yeah, went like party games. There's a deck builder that I really like. Not that deck building is my favorite mechanism, but it is one that I do like. And the game's called Hardback, and
Okay.
it's like each card is a letter, and so you're deck building and playing it. Instead of tiles like scat
Right.
Yeah.
Aren't you like
It's
casting
all-
spells with the letters too or something? Or is that a different game even?
No, that's a different game, but you're trying to put together, kind of like Scrabble, like using the cards to put together a word, and cards are within certain genres. So if you've ever played Marvel Legendary, how like you can link like powers together. So if you play like 2 green cards, that means you get both abilities instead of just the top ability. So they borrowed that whole system. But yeah, hardcover is one that I really enjoy. Let me look down here. Let's go with 3 games that are about animals.
Ooh. It's like animals are the main thing.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever played a game where the animals are the main stars of the game. I might have to take a loss on this one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that.
Have you ever played like Zoo Loretto?
Nope.
I've played that one, or like I know there's a dinosaur like park or something like that. There's also Wingspan, which is pretty popular. That's
I could have said Wingspan.
you've played Wingspan.
I've played Wingspan, and I didn't think about dinosaurs as a viable animal.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. I'd be pretty liberal with like the answers, I suppose. All right, we got a couple left. Okay, so sorry, 3. Okay, so I know we talked about horror and we talked about horror games. So 3 horror games that do not involve zombies and no repeats.
No repeats. No zombies.
Yeah, we already did the zombie one.
Ooh, okay.
3 kind of horror games that would not involve zombies.
Yeah, there's the one that's what's it called? Where it's like 80s themed. It's like a Friday the 13th knockoff party game. I can't remember what that's called.
I know there's The Last Friday. which is a hidden movement game, kind of like Dracula, Fury of Dracula, but it's just.
I think this one was even more of a.
I don't know the party
game.
game one. I don't know that one.
Let's see what else can I come up with. Give me something, board game room. I think
well, we were talking a lot about like Cthulhu earlier.
That's true.
Throw any of those in.
Oh, I have a Legendary Encounters, the Aliens edition.
Good one.
So that Aliens, I guess Aliens is like half horror, half sci-fi, right?
I give it to you.
And man, where is that game?
This has turned into like a scavenger hunt.
The one I was trying to think of before is called Elder Sign.
Oh yeah, Elder Sign, kind of like Yahtzee with theme is what I call it. Oh, let's keep moving on because I've got a few more. So let's get 3 games where there's a person's name in the title. Now it could be a fictitious person or a real person.
We got Kill Dr. Lucky. It's a good one.
There you
go. Let's see.
I haven't played that game in forever.
Would you take God of War? Does he get to be? Is he the God of War? Is that his name?
No.
Okay.
The good old dead air moment.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time.
Yeah, it could just be like someone from history, like name of a historical game, or something from literature, maybe some like literary detective.
Or Sherlock Holmes game. Thank you for that. And I feel like a lot of games, they specifically try to leave the names out to be a little more ambiguous or skirt any copyright infringement. This might be a cheap one. So the 3rd printing of Robo Rally is specifically called Richard Garfield's Robo Rally. So I'm going to submit that one.
Okay.
Yeah, all specifically because the second one was so bad. So they brought Richard Garfield back to kind of update the game a little bit. And then so like right on the logo, it's like, it's Richard Garfield's Robo Rally. Guys, please come back and play Robo Rally again.
Yeah, because that was his, like before Magic the Gathering, I think, or about the same time.
Around the same, I think it was technically after Magic, but before Magic really blew up.
Yeah, because I believe I've heard this story. I watched like a documentary, and Wizards of the Coast. They basically said, "We'll give you some look, or we'll take a look into this Robo Rally game that you're looking at. But what we really need is we need something cheap, and cards are cheap. Card games are cheap. So we'll sign on to do your Robo Rally, or figure it out if you go home and make a game for us, like a card game." So he went home and over the weekend kind of came up with what essentially would be, over the next couple of months, Magic the Gathering.
Nice.
So it's kind of funny because Magic is huge, but he only invented it just to get his baby to the table so that they could produce it. And now, there's tournaments and Magic's huge.
I think it's beyond him at this point.
I think so. To throw out some that I had when I thought of was Robinson Crusoe, Marco Polo. I think there's a King like Arthur game.
Secret Hitler, I just thought of.
Secret Hitler's got the name of the title. Yeah. All right. One title. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3 more. So give me 3 games that have one-word titles.
Coup.
Yep.
Is Gloomhaven one word?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is one word. Yeah.
And viticulture.
Can't seem to get away from Gloomhaven from you.
Nope. It's a curse.
All right, so this is kind of more of an opinion question, so not really a right or wrong answer. But what are three games that are absolutely fantastic, but that they need new artwork or components? I'll
That's a
tell
good
you
one.
mine first. Mine
Sure.
is Agricola, which is like farming game, worker placement. I just love the game. Something about it is awesome, but it just looks it looks terrible, you know. So what would
Yeah.
be three for you? Do you have three games that you love that you wish the components were better?
I've said I really like the game Cryptid, and I'd love to see a version of Cryptid with more going on. Not that it needs it, but I think it could be very fun to have a version like that. Let's see what else.
Okay.
Um let's think. I might be pretty spoiled when it comes to components, I guess, or I'm easy to please and, and
Yeah.
never
I
feel
feel
like it's lacking.
I feel like this was a big problem in the mid 2010s with Euro games because they were
Yeah.
so crunchy and so heavy on the strategy and stuff that the artwork just and the components were just like you're pushing cubes. You're
Yeah.
playing with discs, you know, when it's like, man, they should have had minis. They should have had a better looking box cover.
I think any of the games that are older that I would have played already actually do have updated versions with better components and all that. Because I could say I have an older version of Brass, but that's been redone.
Oh, yeah.
So
Someone did mention that in this already.
yeah.
Brass. I've not played that one. Okay, a couple more. Give me. Well, actually, oh, the last one I have. Okay, so the last one before we kind of wrap it up, we can just say good night, I suppose. Give some plugs, and we can all get back to living our own lives. Let's get three games where you're building a civilization.
Twilight Imperium. We'll say that. Well, I guess you're more building an army. Building a civilization. Settlers of Catan. I haven't said that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider Scythe civilization building as you expand out? Not really, right? I guess you're building
No.
structures, but
Yeah. The civilization games are usually kind of 4X games.
yeah. How about Seven Wonders? That's sort of a civ building.
Sure. Yep.
And for an honest 4X game, man, make me feel really lacking in my my spread of games.
you're missing the biggest one of all time.
The one, just Civilization.
Sid Meier's.
Sid Meier's Civilization. A good thing I didn't say that for a name with a game or a game with a name in it.
Yeah. So I don't have Civilization. I have the New Dawn, which is kind of like a lighter version with the expansion, which I highly recommend that people get because it fixes a lot of problems with it. Other ones that I was thinking that you could put down, what were the other ones? It's Tapestry.
Okay, yeah.
If you ever played Tapestry,
I haven't played it, but I've seen a lot about it.
Yeah, or Through the Ages, which is the I can't pronounce his name. The guy that made code names.
Yeah.
Chavadal, whatever. Through the Ages is another civilization building game. So that is everything for the list. And like I said to my audience, this was all just kind of impromptu for Andrew. I just threw in as a surprise. So Andrew, thanks for kind of sitting down with me. Before we sign off, I'm just going to give you the floor. Go ahead, just plug whatever you want to plug, say whatever you need to say, and we can go back to living our lives.
Yeah. So please check out our podcast. It's Board Game Crawler. You can find it on any of the major streaming platforms, so Spotify, Stitcher, Apple iTunes, whatnot. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Board Game Crawler. We're pretty active on those two platforms. And if you're in the South Florida area, by chance, you can find us on Meetup, or you can follow on Instagram too. And we host weekly meetups, and now we're starting some new monthly events. And my wife also has a live stream channel. It's called Dice World, Dice_World. They stream on Twitch like every like Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday morning, Sunday night. They're doing tons of stuff. So,
it's your wife. You better get the plug right, or
Yeah.
you better
Dice
get her plug
underscore
right.
world. They've been playing Pandemic Legacy Season 0 on Wednesdays.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, is that video game? Because twitching is usually makes me think of video games.
They do a combination of video games and board games. So there's a few people that stream board games on Twitch, and definitely worth checking out.
So
and,
anything else?
Oh, boardgamergifts.com is also a website we have. We have a board game inspired merch, and you can get some podcast merch or some of our meetup merch. Basically anything we're doing that's kind of like the merch central. So boardgamergifts.com. Holidays are around the corner, so if you're looking for a gift for a board game buddy, check it out.
Very cool. So once again, Andrew, thank you for sitting down and just kind of spending a little bit of time with me talking about the podcast. I encourage all of my fans or subscribers to check out Board Game Crawler at the iTunes, Spotify, all those great spots where you can listen to podcasts. Check out their show, which has a lot of different, as we talked about, a lot of different subject matters. It's not necessarily just an interview with someone like me or just reviews, but they're constantly mixing it up. And that's kind of one of the things I really like about your podcast, is because, it is hit and miss. Sometimes I'll see one where I'm not interested and I won't listen, full disclosure, but then other ones, it's just like, oh, that's maybe you guys get into a topic that I really enjoy. So this is everything. Thanks for being with me. Once again, my name is Andrew Davidson. This is where I'm going to leave us for today. You have been watching As Per My Ability, and I will see each and every one of you all at the next video. Thanks again, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you for having me.